Nothing says comfort quite like Nimono. Earthy vegetables simmered in a savory broth make for a great winter staple. My name is Willow, and this is You Need a Bento. Let's make lunch! So, Nimono, we're going to start with our carrots. I like to cut them in rolling wedges. It just adds a kind of random element to it. You can cut them however you want. I'm using 2 medium-sized carrots, but I'm only cutting one on camera, so you're not sitting here for ages watching me cut things. And these are going into a bowl so that everything's prepared for later. The potato, I've used 2 medium small potatoes, and I like to cut them in random shaped pieces as well. They're around about the same size. They're going to simmer for a while, so it's not really going to matter too much, as they all will get cooked. And if you use a potato that keeps its shape when it's cooked, you don't really have to worry about mushiness. And even if you do, it's not really that bad. And these are going into the bowl as well. Now these are shiitake mushrooms. I have soaked them overnight. They usually come dried in a big package. You squeeze the moisture out. And you reserve that water because you're going to want that later. And this, I have 300 mils of water. What we want is a total of 400 milliliters. There is a little bit of ick in with the mushrooms, so you always put a strainer down. And I'm going to pour just enough to make this to 400 milliliters of water, or of liquid. And this, we're going to add bonito stock to. That was about half a teaspoon, but double check your package directions. This is 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of mirin, and 1 tablespoon of sugar. And that's our liquid done for when we need to simmer the vegetables. And we're just going to take these shiitake caps. You want to cut off the foot, just like you would with any other time you use mushrooms, and just slice them into, again, rough size pieces. It'll depend on your palate too. If you don't like mushrooms, don't add mushrooms. And we're all ready to move to the stove. Now that our oil is warmed, we just want to lightly brown our vegetables. Let's settle them in, let them sit for a minute. And I'm adding about 8 to 10 snap peas. They add a really nice color and a freshness in the flavor. Be mindful of the mushrooms as they will stick down. And to this, now that we've got them warm, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of cooking wine. You can use sake. I use a Chinese cooking wine. And once you can smell that the alcohol is evaporated, that stock that we made earlier, we're going to throw that in. Now we're going to want to bring this to a boil. You may need to turn the heat up. And while that's coming to a boil, I'll show you how to make a drop lid with aluminum foil. Drop lids are something that you'll come across in Japanese cooking fairly regularly, but they're very rare here. So it's really handy to know how to make a cheap, easy one and something you can just toss when you're finished. So you're going to start with finished. I figured I'd voice it over. The foil noise was really bad and it's very hard on the ears. So we're starting with smushing down the corners so that we have a round shape that we can then form to the size of our pot. Annie was also screaming the whole time because she hates the sound of tinfoil. And there we go, we're sort of round. And we're just going to start rolling and smushing to kind of manage the size. It should sit just inside of your pot so that there's not a whole lot of a gap in between the edge of your pot and the lid. The idea is to keep liquid in contact with your vegetables to make sure they don't dry out. You constantly want to keep an eye on the size, and that way you don't go too small. A little bit bigger is okay because you can just smush it down in. Okay. That'll fit just nice. And we just have to wait for this to come to a boil. You don't need to skim it. You don't really need to do anything with it. Now that we can just start seeing it boil. It's just the very beginning stages, but if you let it get going too hard, you can break up your vegetables or give an off flavor to things. So we're going to turn it way down. Put the drop lid on. And then put the lid that fits your pot on the pot. I don't have a lid for this one, so I use an IKEA silicone lid, which means I also have to turn it down a little bit more because it doesn't vent properly. But we're gonna let this simmer until the vegetables are tender, and then you just turn it off and leave it. Don't do anything with it. Just let it cool down in the pot as it stands. And then once it's cool, you can reheat and serve or stick it in your bento. I hope you try it out and see what you think. I'd love to hear all about it. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.